Throughout history, Muslims have played a major role in protecting and supporting Jewish communities, helping them live safely and flourish. This legacy stretches from the early days of Islam through the golden age of Muslim Spain, and even into modern times during the horrors of the Holocaust. These stories remind us of Allah's timeless command in the Quran that we must stand for justice and protect the oppressed. Allah tells us that He commands us to give people their rights and to judge between them with fairness. Roman persecution of the Jews, the Jewish revolts against Rome. Before Islam began, Jewish people suffered greatly under the power of the Roman Empire. In the 1st century Common Era, the Jews of Judea rebelled against Roman rule. The first Jewish-Roman war started in 66 Common Era. At first, it brought hope. Jewish fighters won an early victory at the Battle of Beth Horon, defeating a Roman army and forcing them to retreat. But Rome returned with full strength. In 70 CE, Emperor Titus led his legions to Jerusalem, besieging the city. They destroyed it completely, burned down the Second Temple, and killed or enslaved thousands of Jews. It was one of the darkest times in Jewish history. The Bar Kokhba Revolt, 132 to 135 CE. About 60 years later, another rebellion rose under Simon Bar Kokhba. For a short time, the Jews regained control of their homeland, but the Romans crushed them again with terrible violence. By 135 CE, hundreds of thousands of Jews had been killed. The Romans renamed Judea as Syria Palestina, banned Jews from entering Jerusalem, and forced many into exile. For centuries afterward, Jewish communities were scattered and persecuted across the Roman and Byzantine worlds. Umar ibn al-Khattab and the liberation of Jerusalem. When Muslim forces entered Jerusalem in 637 CE under Caliph Umar ibn al-Khattab, they came not to destroy but to bring peace. Umar radiallahu anhu, the second Caliph of Islam, was known for his humility, his fairness, and his dedication to justice. His leadership followed the same principles taught by Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam, mercy and balance for all people. The Constitution of Medina. Years earlier, when the Prophet ﷺ migrated to Medina, one of his first actions was to create the Constitution of Medina. It united Muslims, Jews, and other tribes into one community, one ummah. It declared that Jews and Muslims were one people, living together in mutual protection. Each group could freely practice its own religion. Loyalty between them meant protection from harm and betrayal. This idea was revolutionary for its time. Jews could live safely, worship freely, and were treated as equal citizens. The Prophet ﷺ himself showed this justice in action. When a Muslim and a Jew came to him with a dispute, he ruled in favor of the Jew, proving that justice comes before tribal loyalty. He also said that whoever wrongs someone under a treaty or burdens them beyond their ability, he himself will stand against that person on the day of judgment. The Treaty of Umar. When Jerusalem came under Muslim rule, Umar promised safety for both Christians and Jews. His treaty guaranteed freedom of religion, protection of life and property, and the right to live and trade peacefully. For the Jewish people, this was life-changing. After centuries of being banned from Jerusalem, they were finally allowed to return and pray at their sacred sites. Umar showed great humility. When invited to pray inside the Church of the Holy Sepulchre, he refused, fearing that later Muslims might claim it as their own. Instead, he prayed outside, showing deep respect for other faiths. Under Muslim rule, Jerusalem became a city where Muslims, Jews, and Christians could once again live and worship side by side in peace. Jewish flourishing in Muslim Spain, 711 to 1492 CE. The period of Muslim rule in Spain, Al-Andalus, became one of the greatest golden ages of Jewish history. While much of Europe was suffering from wars and religious persecution, Muslim Spain became a center of learning, tolerance, and culture. A golden age of knowledge. Under Muslim governance, Jews rose to become scholars, doctors, poets, and even government officials. They thrived in cities like Cordoba and Granada and made great contributions to science, philosophy, and literature. One of the most famous Jewish thinkers, Maimonides, 1135 to 1204, was born in Cordoba. He grew up surrounded by Muslim intellectuals like Ibn Sina and Al-Farabi. Writing in Arabic, his Guide for the Perplexed became a cornerstone of Jewish philosophy. Safety during hard times. When Christian kingdoms began retaking Spain in the Reconquista, Jewish communities fell under persecution. In 1085, when Toledo was captured, Jews faced oppression and forced conversion. Suffering reached its peak in 1492, when King Ferdinand and Queen Isabella issued the Alhambra Decree, expelling all Jews from Spain. Many were tortured or executed during the Inquisition. But under Muslim rule, Jews often found refuge. When Cordoba fell to Christian armies, many Jews fled to Granada, which was still under Muslim control. There, they were welcomed and allowed to rebuild their lives. Granada became a new center of Jewish learning and culture. Figures like Samuel ibn Naghrillah rose to high positions, even serving as viziers under Muslim rulers. This showed the deep respect and trust between Muslims and Jews. Beyond Spain. This spirit of coexistence spread across the Muslim world. In Baghdad, Cairo, and Damascus, Jewish communities flourished. Under the Abbasid Caliphate, Jews were allowed to govern their own religious and civil affairs under their leader, the Exilak. At the House of Wisdom in Baghdad, Muslim, Jewish, and Christian scholars worked together to translate and preserve the knowledge of the ancient world. Jewish scientists and doctors were highly respected for their expertise. Muslim leaders understood that diversity made society stronger and that the success of one community benefited all. The Ottoman Empire. This tradition of protection continued under the Ottoman Empire. When the Jews of Spain were expelled in 1492, Sultan Bayezid II sent ships to rescue them and invited them to live safely in his lands. Tens of thousands of Jewish refugees settled in Istanbul, Salonika, and Izmir. They built synagogues, schools, and printing presses. They lived freely and practiced their faith for centuries under Ottoman rule. Bayezid is said to have mocked the Spanish rulers for expelling such valuable citizens, saying they had weakened their own country while strengthening his. Indeed, the Jewish communities brought skills, trade, and knowledge that enriched the empire in countless ways. The Quran teaches us that there is no compulsion in religion, and the Ottomans lived by that principle. Their welcoming of the Jews became a shining example of how Islamic values of justice and compassion can shape entire nations. Muslims during the Holocaust. Even in the terrible years of the 20th century, Muslims upheld this legacy of protection. Albania and the Code of Bisa. During World War II, Nazi Germany spread fear across Europe, hunting Jews wherever they could find them. But in Albania, Muslims risked everything to save their Jewish neighbors. Guided by their faith and the traditional Albanian code of Bisa, which means honor and protection, Muslims hid Jews in their homes and villages, treating them like family. By the end of the war, Albania was the only European country that had more Jews than before the Nazi occupation. Dr. Muhammad Helmi in Berlin. In Nazi Germany itself, a Muslim doctor named Muhammad Helmi showed incredible bravery. Born in Sudan and raised in Egypt, he lived in Berlin, where he faced discrimination under Hitler's rule. Despite the risk to his own life, he hid Jewish families from the Nazis. One of them was a teenage girl named Anna Boros, whom he kept safe in a cabin and helped with false identity papers. Even under Gestapo questioning, he never betrayed her. The Grand Mosque of Paris. In occupied France, the Grand Mosque of Paris became a refuge for Jews escaping Nazi persecution. Its leader, Si Kadur bin Ghabrit, provided fake Muslim identity documents and hid Jewish families in the mosque's tunnels. One of those he saved was the Jewish Algerian singer, Simon Halali, whose life was spared thanks to bin Ghabrit's courage. Across Europe, from Paris to Berlin to Albania, Muslims acted on their belief that protecting the oppressed is an Islamic duty, even when it meant risking their own lives. Jewish migration to Palestine. In the late 1800s and early 1900s, waves of Jewish migration to Palestine began. Many came seeking safety from persecution in Europe. At first, Muslims in Palestine welcomed them as neighbors in need. Jews bought land, built farms, and lived alongside Muslims and Christians. But as the Zionist movement grew, its leaders began calling for the creation of a separate Jewish state. This goal meant displacing the people who already lived there, the Palestinians. As land was purchased and farmers were evicted, tension and resentment grew. The situation reached its breaking point in 1948 with the Nakba, the catastrophe. After the United Nations partition plan, fighting broke out, and over 700,000 Palestinians were forced from their homes. More than 500 villages were destroyed. It was a devastating end to a long story of Muslim protection for Jewish people, a reminder of how injustice and politics can tear apart centuries of coexistence. Islam calls on Muslims to see the humanity in everyone, to act with mercy, and to stand firmly for justice. From Medina to Jerusalem, from Al-Andalus to the Ottoman Empire, and even during the Holocaust, Muslims have stood beside their Jewish neighbors in times of fear and hardship. This isn't just a story of the past, it's a lesson for today, that the true legacy of Islam is one of compassion, fairness, and protection for all people. This is our story, and it's a legacy the world should never forget.